It is led by the philosophers who are recruited from the warrior caste. And Bulgakov, this is a Russian I've spoken about in my atheist series on socialism. This is another crazy atheist, socialist philosopher, crazy man. Bulgakov has pointed out that the term philosophers in the context of the politeia can also be translated as the righteous or the saints. So Plato designs an ideal state whose main purpose is the perfection of man. Don't take that the wrong way. Muhammad was the perfect man. Those guys, those Germans from 1939, they were looking to create the perfect man, the Übermensch. The Russians, the communists, were trying to create the perfect Soviet man. See, the perfect socialist man with the perfectly indoctrinated mind. See, so he was, unfortunately, these ideas come from Plato's dark side, right? And these philosophers, now, of course, in today's world, we would call them scientists. These scientists are the righteous or the saints. Do you understand? These natural scientists of the Enlightenment era were the righteous ones. They were the saints. Do you understand the implication here? They're utilizing pagan philosophy and calling themselves the saints, the leaders of men, the righteous ones. So Plato held the opinion that the state can fulfill its pastoral task best within the framework of a state socialist form of organization. In other words, Plato was a socialist. Plato recommended socialism. Plato liked his little bit of totalitarianism. This is the bit they forgot to teach you in college. So one day if I dive into this, Plato said some pretty bad things that you realize that the Marx and Lenin kind of just took some of those ideas straight out of Plato and yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Let's go murder a bunch of people. Put them in gulags. Nothing new under the sun. Yes. So, yeah. Now, Socrates, of course, you could say God showed us the perfect man. Yes, Villainous. Good point. So Socrates primarily focused on moral philosophy. Oh, good grief. You know what? Okay, let me just take this away. I have made a wrong mistake here. I've messed up my slide again. I always do this. So now this method, okay, considered the foundation of Socrates' philosophy, this question and answer, is believed to have originated from Zeno, a student of Parmenides, but it gained widespread recognition through Socrates. So he focused on moral philosophy. He was not interested in subjects like mathematics or science. He dedicated his attention to exploring the quality of the soul, and his philosophy was about guiding individuals to live a virtuous life. But Plato's worship of these academic stuff today, I wonder why. Yeah, we're going to start seeing where all this goes, Pedro. I hope this is not dull. I'm trying to lay out a lot of history and a lot of philosophy so you can start to see how these ideas, and you'll see these ideas go downhill pretty fast. So in his quest for virtue, Socrates engages in discussions about various virtues such as wisdom, justice, courage, piety, and others. His mission is to correct false beliefs and emphasize that people should prioritize the well-being of their souls over material possessions. And his famous statement, wealth does not bring goodness, but goodness brings wealth, exemplifies this belief. Thank you, Scarlett. So, Socrates saw himself as serving the city of Athens and its citizens by challenging and correcting their erroneous thinking patterns. As a man of principle, he lives according to what he believes, right? So he's not interested in material possessions or physical beauty. Apparently he was known to be poor and ugly, and he took no money for his teaching, unlike the sophists who did. How does one make a wrong mistake? I do that all the time, infinite reach. So now, he dedicates his life to understanding the virtues so that he could be more virtuous. Now, of course, he teaches that we must practice virtue. To be more virtuous, we must practice virtue. And this would be to do good works, right? To learn how to do good, we must do good. To learn how to be a better person, we need to practice being good. In other words, there's an objective good. You can achieve this by doing good things, that you have a moral sense. Now, of course, these other philosophies reject that. So you could also teach others how to be virtuous too. And he thought that being virtuous leads to true happiness. This would sound vaguely Christian even, the ethical moral here. So he was uncompromising in his belief about the right way to live. And of course, he was then condemned to death. He does sound kind of Christian, doesn't he? These are pagans, but understand, they are starting to hit on the truth. They're starting to come upon the truth. Now, if you're concentrated on Plato and Marx and academia, then you don't need to be bothered by God's expectations. Yes, exactly. So, materialism. This is a philosophical idea. Is it even a philosophy? Well, let's just use the word philosophical idea for now, and let's just say it's an ideology. It's an error. Let's call it that. So this is the belief that physical matter is the fundamental substance of the world, and that everything, including consciousness and mental states, can be explained in terms of material interactions. In other words, this would be atoms knocking into each other. This would be chemicals sloshing about and slamming into each other in your bloodstream and in your nervous system and in your brain. All of these interactions obey physical laws, and there's an element of randomness. There's a little element of chance that also, now you'll notice that you read Darwinism and you read about atheism and they speak of their materialism, that they do talk of this randomness. And this idea goes back, 2,500 years, back to these pagans. Right. So now, this is a pre-Socratic philosophy. And for most of history, this is a minor view. Now, this view is the popular elite or academic view now by these philosophers, these saints, the righteous, the scientists. See, humanists spread propaganda. My camera. I need to fix my camera. Let me just fix my camera. Lately, it had an update and it's doing some weird things. Let me disable that again. It keeps enabling itself. Don't know why. So, now, this view that everything is material, that everything is simply just matter colliding into matter, and matter somehow creates consciousness, dead matter creates life, this is the current academic view. Humanists spread propaganda to identify materialism with science itself. I covered this in my talks on socialism. Right? Humanists say that to be scientific, you must be materialistic. There is no other way to do science. Now, I've mentioned this, I've done this before on my talks, but there's a paper called An Analysis of the Argumentation Within the Religious Humanist Movement by Richard Crawford, page 78. I've covered this in one of my talks on socialism and on humanism, religious humanism, right? And I have covered that before, so at length I've got a couple of episodes on that, which goes into detail on the propaganda that they started publishing in the 60s through to the late 80s on this exact topic, right? Now, materialism and science are not the same thing. Science comes from a word that means knowledge or knowing. For example, historical materialism, back to materialism, is a theory developed by Karl Marx. Plato, as we learned, might have something to do with socialism, just a little bit. Now, I'll explain this more fully in my next series, right? Historical materialism. But this is interesting, you see, because now they're speaking of, here they contradict themselves, and you see the desperation, and they hope you don't catch the little sleight of hand that they're doing.